Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is September 27th, 2016, and things have been going really well for Mormon Stories. We've had some great episodes lately and some great series. We've recently done the series on early return missionaries. We just had a fantastic couple episodes with the Hackings and with the Caters, which have been really, really popular. And we're about to kick off a series on Mormons in the United Kingdom, in England, and maybe even Scotland. But I had a story come to me just yesterday or the day before, and it's the type of story that I'm very committed to covering. Today we're going to be interviewing Amy and Jake Malouf. Is that how you guys pronounce it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. They live in Alaska. What part of Alaska?
We live in Anchorage.
Anchorage, Alaska. Okay. And my understanding is that they've played a really important role, or at least an important role in the church there for quite some time. Very, very historically committed and active and well-respected members of the church. And I was informed recently that one or both of them have been summoned to a disciplinary council in their stake. And we're just a week or two away. What's the date of the disciplinary council?
It's October 11th.
And is it both of you or just one of you?
Well, there's a story there, but
Okay.
we talked them into both of us, so it'll be for both of us in front of the High Council.
Okay, great.
All they really want is Jake, but I'm coming anyway.
All right, that's good. I like that. All right, I'm excited to talk about that. And
Yeah.
and here on Mormon Stories, you know, I've been through an excommunication. We've interviewed Rock Waterman and the Calderwoods and many others. I just think excommunication, I just don't like it. And I think every time it happens, there needs to be sunlight. People feel differently about it, but I just think it's important that everybody know what's going on. So I'm committed to doing as many of these interviews as needs be until, from my perspective, the practice stops, at least for things like beliefs and doubt and openly discussing doubts and things of that matter. So that's why we're doing this interview. So Amy and Jake, welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thanks, John.
All right. So let's begin by just talking briefly about each of your backgrounds in the church and kind of your early years. So Amy, why don't we start with you? What are you comfortable sharing your maiden name?
Yeah, it's Robinson.
Robinson.
Amy Robinson Malouf. And
Okay.
I was born in Salt Lake City the year Star Wars came out. It was rad.
77?
77, yeah.
Woo!
Nice. And born in Salt Lake City to a happy Mormon family. Both my parents are still active members of the church. My mother was a convert. She converted when she was in her early 20s. Was up at Utah State and came to Utah because she didn't want to be around the California drinking crowd. And that was a big motivation for her, just to find fun friends to be with that were clean living. And so Utah had a big draw for her. And my dad comes from pioneer stock. His family's in southern Utah and Las Vegas, and mostly Mormons and various levels of activity. But yeah, good people that were committed their lives to the faith. And yeah, where do you want to go from there?
How was your upbringing in the church? Were you active? Did you enjoy it? Did you have good experiences, bad experiences? How was your upbringing?
It was idyllic. It was really nice. I had a good group of friends. My family was a pivotal part of my life. I thought life was perfect and felt very blessed. There's always ups and downs with growing up and the roller coasters of learning how to use your body and turn into a teenager and all that stuff. But it was great. My whole neighborhood was Mormon. I mean, for the most part, and most of my friends were LDS, and it was a big part of my life. I had a few friends that weren't members, and one of the things that was hard for me as a kid was the way non-members were treated by my Mormon friends, and it was pretty pack-like and aggressive a lot of the times. And I remember being torn a lot with that, and whether to stand by my friends or or just be quiet and let the bullies bully. But so that was probably one of the big things to put on my shelf as a kid. How can Mormons be such brats when we all know better? But the church was true, and it was just that was a people problem, not a doctrine problem. And so that didn't matter for me. I was full committed, and was active in Young Women's, had good callings there, and did lots of stuff. Kind of by high school, I had better things to do with my time than go to Young Women's, because the activities were boring, and I'd rather go mountain biking or climbing. And so it was just more fun. It didn't fill a need for me, but it wasn't because of lack of testimony. It was just these activities are boring, and I've got better stuff to do. But yeah, I read my scriptures, said my prayers, wrote my journal, didn't shop on Sunday, didn't drink coffee, loved the smell of coffee, but I didn't drink it, and I was willing to go to my grave not drinking coffee because it was just the wrong thing to do, or at least that was our commandment right now. And happy childhood. Life was good.
And did you feel like, what was your testimony rooted in? Had you had powerful spiritual experiences? Was it more socially constructed? What
it was rooted in the doctrines of Jesus Christ. There was a lot of cultural things like green jello and church dances that just drove me crazy. I just assumed do other things, but the doctrines of Christ were huge for me, and the atonement and prayer, and that I was loved, and that I had a divine purpose. That was all intact and powerful. And the annoying things about church culture for me were like, well, we have ridiculously boring parties. Most of the people drive me crazy because we talk about the weather and just cross stitching, and I want to go climb some mountains and do real stuff and jump off high things with bungee cords, and I wanted adventure and excitement, and it really wasn't offered to me at church. But that's not why I was there anyway, so it didn't matter. It was just more of a social annoyance.
Partly because you were a girl.
And partly because I was a girl. I remember when I was 14, I set up an appointment with my bishop because the boys were doing a high adventure, and all we got to do is car camping. And I said, this is not fair. I want to go and do some of these rad adventures. And so I set up an appointment. I went in and talked to him. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, I think I should go with the boys. I'm tough enough. I'm tougher than most of them. I'm faster than most of them. I think you should let me go. And what's the problem? And, I think it's really funny now, but I was serious about my plight, and that I was being treated unjustly. And he said, well, we just don't have the leadership for it. And we had two leaders that would have gone, but it was a boys' trip, and I was the only one that wanted to go. So that I put that on my shelf and said, when I'm a leader, I'm going to fix that. And we'll get to that stuff later, but that was huge for me, just the overt sexism and the unapologetic sexism that was just there. And women got stuck with the shaft. Men got to go move all the boxes when it was moving day, and women got to clean around the toilets. That's a raw deal. Boxes are so much more fun to move than clean toilets. I'll move boxes any day.
Sure.
So yes, the gender issues were huge for me, just massive. Probably one of the biggest things of, I'm going to make this work, but it sucks. Yeah.
But your testimony was super rooted in Christ, and that was your rock.
Yeah, that was my rock. So the social, all the other things that the church fell short in, of which there were many, they didn't matter to me. So I was going to just be a change to fix them.
Got it.
So yeah, that was my.
All right, Amy. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah.
All right, Jake, your turn.
Oh, my turn. Yeah. I wrote notes because I have a short memory. But similar to Amy. I think had we met each other when we were younger, I think we would have been best friends. But I'm born in the church, raised in Utah, Cache Valley. Super strong family.
Cache Valley.
I love it.
Which high school?
I went to Skyview.
Yes, Bobcats.
Awesome. The true school. In fact, we just went to our 20-year reunion last year. It was super fun to go back.
Awesome.
Yeah, super strong family connections, long connection to Mormonism. Some in my family were more recent converts, like my grandparents, but then also I have pioneers that walked across the plains. Primarily an entirely LDS family with a few exceptions. I had really good friends that I grew up with, raised by people and family and friends that taught me to work hard and play harder and think deeply, seek truth, that type of thing. I have no complaints about my childhood. As far as church stuff, I was into it. I had my Eagle Scout when I was 13 years old.
Whoa.
And it's kind of a charger, There's I don't know if you've heard of the Lotajet. It's this bike race that goes from Logan up to Jackson. Yeah, my buddy and I, we were 14 when we decided we were going to go do that, and we signed up for the race. And they said, well, there's no category for someone your age, and so we said, well, let's make one, and so they did, and so we did it every year from thereafter, and just lots of kind of I played saxophone and piano and went mountain climbing and skiing and hunting and just kind of I really bought into this notion of it's important to improve yourself and be involved in kind of the Renaissance type idea, and kind of some of that led to how we lead our lives now, which we can get into later. I remember fantasizing. We'd do some of these things, and I'd fantasize about maybe winning some great race someday, and I'd be in the Olympics, and I'd dash across the line against all odds, and I would stand in front of the world, and I would testify that my success was due to my strict obedience to the word of wisdom, and I'd grow the church, stuff like that. And I think sorry if there's any super athletes out there, but I think there's a certain level of narcissism that has to exist to compete at that level. So I never did, but we like being active, that type of thing. I grew up. I worked on a farm, kind of that farm stock. The guy who ran the farm, it was a working historical farm. He was actually our Sunday school teacher. He's kind of a crusty guy, partly active, and but he taught us how to work, and we loved spending time out with the Shire workhorses and shoveling manure. And he'd teach us things like the only thing you can do well with a pair of gloves on is wet your pants, and good sayings like that. And, but that was kind of how I grew up. My mom, she had arthritis, severe rheumatoid arthritis growing up, and I think that shaped a lot of the way I viewed the world. Gender roles in particular, just simply because she physically couldn't do some things that maybe women in the church or women in general would typically do. And so I would see my dad, doing the dishes and doing all these other things in addition to everything else he did. And I think it was a good example. Like, hey, you can do stuff if it's satisfying and meaningful and purposeful. It doesn't really matter what your gender is. And I'm sorry my mom has to go through that challenge, but I think she and I would agree that it's got its benefits. It's taught us some things. Church, I'm super committed. I was kind of that type that would read the Book of Mormon before you're baptized and that type of thing. I had a strong desire to serve in the church, and I'd fantasize as I remember pushing the lawnmower once, and I'd fantasize someday I'm going to be the leader in the church and change the world. And I did have one experience, several really, but one experience that was pretty impactful in my life. I went to EFY when I was 14. That's what you do. And my friends were going, so I shelled out the bucks, and we went down to BYU for a week. And while I was there, there's all the dances and workshops and things, and I was just kind of like, I don't know, what is the deal with all this? And I remember one night praying, just like sitting down on my knees in the dorm, and I kind of had a pretty amazing experience for me. And I think if using Mormon terms, I would say, it was like a baptism by fire or something. I don't know what it was, John, honestly. But from that, I felt a deep, deep sense that there are higher powers above, and that I'm loved, and that life is good. And I don't know what that was, but I I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, just simply because it was a pretty formative experience and foundational to, kind of who I was. I wanted to do good stuff, and I kept going back. But one thing that always kind of puzzled me with that experience is I'd heard of people having similar things, and I thought, well, you're going to get this big witness, and it's going to say the church is true. And I never, ever got that. What I got was I'm loved, and life is good. And that I never, there's no the Book of Mormon or Joseph Smith or the church or this, that, or the other. It was something something different. Callings. I went on a mission to Italy. Generally, challenging, but generally, I'd say a pretty positive experience. All sorts of stories there. Been, a teacher, an advisor, elders quorum president, young, ward mission leader, branch president, bishopric counselor for many years. Lots and lots of kind of higher profile, active, time-consuming type service things within the church. I don't know what else.
That's great. No, so that's really good background. You guys got married, and I'm sure that we could dig a lot into, two incredible lives. But for the sake of kind of hitting this topic hard, maybe from here, talk about what, after you got married, what things led to sort of whatever conflict you're now facing. I'm assuming you guys both served. What I've heard is that you guys are a pretty connected and well-respected couple in the Anchorage community. I don't mean to overblow that, but that's kind of...
I wouldn't overblow it, but some people feel that way.
Yeah, we have more friends than enemies. But
right now, as of now.
For now.
Well, I think we're already on the outs with you, but but we have a great social network, and I think generally well liked.
So you've been in Alaska how long?
14 years. Our daughter was a baby when we moved up.
Okay.
So one thing that is kind of an important piece to the puzzle. So I went through and took out my endowments when I was 19. Before I was engaged, before I wasn't mission bound. It was my next step of spiritual awesomeness, and I really wanted to do it, and so I did. My bishop was like, "Yeah, I think this will be a good thing for you." So I was endowed before I even met Jake, and we were actually engaged 9 months later, and we got engaged in the Logan Celestial Room in the temple. Like we were, we're full in. Like it's not any half Mormon here.
Yeah.
Our belief and our commitment to what we wanted, and all we wanted was perfection, And anyway, so a little bit of history with that. So we got married 99, and then moved up here 2002. And one of the reasons we moved up here, it was too hot in Logan. It was just too hot there. We couldn't handle it.
That's the first time I've ever heard that.
And the winters were too short.
Yeah, winters were not wintry enough, and the summers were too hot. So we drove up the highway, and we've been here ever since. But
we should probably back up a little bit, though.
Critical.
Yeah, I think a couple pretty big formative things before we moved up to Alaska. Married in '99, and then just a few months later, we ended up going to Africa together and spent better part of
4 months.
4 months in Africa, and studying cheetahs is through school, through Utah State University, and is super neat working with the Cheetah Conservation Fund, and really got exposed to a lot of fairly prominent scientists and the concepts of research and that type of thing, and really enhanced. I mean, we'd already done some traveling, but it really enhanced our world lens. Kind of living in the bush and working with people in Namibia is where we were at, and then did some traveling through Europe later and some climbing and that type of thing. But I think the professors we worked with really asked some pretty poignant questions about, why do you believe what you believe? And, at the time we were, very zealous about going to the animal watch stations every Sunday and having our own private sacrament meeting because,
we had permission to have our own sacrament meeting, and it was cool.
But it did, it put a lot of thoughts into our head of like, what's it like? And then shortly after that, we worked as counselors, wilderness survival counselors for like a wilderness rehab program down in southern Utah. And just, super neat working with the kids that would get shipped out by the court system or their parents to go get fixed by the desert. And, living with sticks and no matches and, no tents and no sleeping bags.
We had a wool blanket and a bag of food.
Yeah.
It was rad.
It's pretty primitive. But,
it was really fun.
Wow. But through that, we met a number of pretty phenomenal individuals. Ended up going to a school ran by a guy named Tom Brown, who's like
he's a tracker.
He's like a master tracker, and we learned about various levels of awareness and different types of spirituality and survival, and also but we kind of met our people, and like for the first time I think really in our lives, even though we had grown up with a strong community, we met some of these folks and we looked at each other and like, these are our
cool.
people.
A group of 80 strangers that we felt like we'd known like our whole lives.
So I think a lot of this kind of played together, and of course coming up here, we kind of getting out of the Utah bubble, we realized most of our closest friends were not in the church or not members of the church or never had been, and they were super great examples of healthy living and prosperous lives and true joy, every bit as, or if not more so, than our LDS friends. And so we think about this, and I think we both kind of came to the conclusion at some point that we had great upbringings, but we're slow to give too much credit to our church membership. Although initially we're like, well, we are who we are because we grew up in the church, and how would our lives be without it? But I think I've concluded that we have these experiences because of the church. The other way. We have these experiences through the church, but not necessarily because of it. And I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, and one thing that kept going through in my mind, I think for both of us, was by their fruits you shall know them. And we kept seeing time and time again the fruits within the LDS church. They're kind of shriveled. They're not. We found more vibrant and better fruit consistently other places, and lots of other places, and we couldn't explain it, and we were disappointed by it, but we needed to have this level of honesty of, when the leaders hop up and say and praise the youth, like, you guys are the best, you're the best generation, you're most noble, you're most amazing, and they just patronize these kids, and it's I would hear them say this, and I just want to it just wasn't true. They're good kids. They have a lot of potential, just like anyone else on the planet. But they weren't above and beyond, and in many ways they were less accomplished and less inspiring than many of the other youth we met outside of the church. And that was, we had to reconcile that, and we couldn't just keep pretending that the fruits of the church were really good.
Yeah.
So that was a big one, and that was consistent for a long time for both of us.
I think, maybe kind of fast forward a little bit to
the actual faith crisis.
Maybe when we began our actual faith. Call it an enlightenment. Some people call it a crisis.
Yeah, I don't like the term faith crisis.
I like to call it an awakening, really.
I love it.
But I think sometime in probably 2014, I kind of put together a timeline.
Yeah.
Last night we were like, man,
it's like a swirl sometimes, trying to pinpoint what happened first.
But I think at the time I was the scoutmaster of the ward, and I was under all this pretense that I am people were calling me the best scoutmaster in the church.
It was kind of ridiculous,
and I had all this pressure to like make amazing programs, but I found that it doesn't work to try to run an effective duty to God program while running an effective scouting program, and they don't mesh. People say they do, but they don't.
You can't.
They don't work together. You end up with kind of a half-baked hybrid of both. And I realized that, hey, this program works better outside of the church. And we started looking at stuff, and what the word of wisdom was a big, kind of a big catalyst for us. Confession here, I've always wanted to drink a beer, but like Amy's, like I was committed to never touch a drop of alcohol till I died because that was God's truth, right?
Because of the principle.
But looking into it, I try to be intellectually honest as well, and looking at the history of the Word of Wisdom, I was like, I don't think this is pretty. I remember talking to a lot of our non-member friends as they'd show us their home brew or whatever, and we'd politely deny it or whatever, but I'd say, you know what, when we get to heaven, I'm sure we'll be drinking that stuff, and it's going to be great. But I look into this, and I think we did a pretty exhaustive, deep study into the Word of Wisdom, looking at all sorts of documents. And I think by now we'd realize that it really isn't. It's pretty disingenuous to limit our study to what's been authorized by the church. I think that's pretty Orwellian, and I think it's important to look at all the information that's out there and weigh the facts and information as best we have them. And
that quote by what's his face, the truth being harmed.
Oh,
that was one of our guiding quotes. I mean, you've heard it probably a million times, but
the J. Reuben Clark quote. You got to look into this.
If we have the truth, we have nothing to fear. If we have not the truth, we deserve to be harmed, or something like that. Right?
It turns out he made that statement while he was. It was in his private journal or maybe a letter to a friend, but it wasn't ever a public statement that he made. But it has since become one. But I think it underscores that there's a lot of people in the church, both prominent and not, that struggle with these issues. And I think some people kind of stuff them under a pillow and never address them, and others do. And I think we're an example of what happens when you do. And I like that. Anyway, studying the Word of Wisdom kind of opened an investigation, I think, that was, at least for us, unprecedented. I mean, go ahead.
If I could just jump in for a second. It's funny because so many, transitioning and post-Mormons have to fight the stereotype of quote, wanting to sin, and that's why they leave. And so lately I like to make the joke that people leave the church because they want to drink beer. So
it's a totally valid reason to fight.
Yeah, and
but I was just going to say that if you actually are applying a critical analysis, Jesus drank wine, Joseph drank beer, Joseph drank more hard, alcohol. The saints drank alcohol, all the pioneers, all the way through to the early apostles. You know all this, like why? And the Word of Wisdom itself says, what does it say? Mild drinks of barley? Is that what it says?
Yeah, there's the bad list and the good list, and mild drinks made of barley are on the good list, and there's only one option.
And I want to do the right thing.
So I'm gonna work on the good list, and I'm gonna have beer.
Obedient. You were being obedient to the Word of Wisdom, not
violating it. We joke about that, but I think, to be honest, we've never really, we don't want to sin. That's not really our nature, but we want to do the right thing. And so people, I think, like you say, people misconstrue, like, you started drinking beer and then you lose the spirit and then it's downhill from there. And really, it's the opposite.
We didn't drink beer until we decided via our study and prayer that it was all right, and then we had a beer. So we technically still had, by Mormon speak, the Spirit with us before we even made that decision.
You had righteous beer, is what you had.
We had righteous.
We didn't pray before we drank it, but anyway.
And the funny thing is, when we both drank it, neither of us were like, that's disgusting. But we were so determined that we were going to like it anyway. It was just a matter of time. We just kept, it was some hard work, but we kept focused. We set some little goals, and we love it now.
You guys are overachievers in all things.
Yeah, we were killing it. We made a little chart.
But we really looked into it. I mean, of course, all the topics. You pick any church topic, and we dug into it, and not just superficially, but really. We would literally thousands and thousands of hours. I would wake up early in the morning and just study for hours and read. And it was like, it was almost addicting, because it was so just
we had to
deconstructing and figuring out and reconstructing and figuring out where we stood with all these issues. And we even met with apostles from other denominations from within Mormonism, who, because there's like 40 something different breakoffs from the original one started by Joseph. And we met with these people, and I think, to be spiritually and intellectually and emotionally honest, we just had to come to the conclusions we do, that the church just simply isn't what it's not what it claims to be.
So, Amy, as Jake's starting to be interested in beer and in studying deeply, what's going on in your mind during that time as a perfectionist, in it to win it kind of Mormon?
Yeah. So the wonderful thing about our marriage is when one of us has an idea, it takes the other person about 3 or 4 seconds to have the same idea. So
or days.
We're usually not off very much, and it's definitely been leapfrog. I mean, you pick the topic, and it's either I was interested first or he was interested first. One of the big things for me was I was in a young women's leadership role, and there was some changes, and the presidency got released, and I knew these. I've worked with the youth for a long time, and I know how to run young women's, and I know how to work with, have fun and work and inspire the kids and play hard, work hard, cry together, laugh together, all that stuff that makes up our youth programs. And when they restructured the program, they really just messed it up. And I had for the first time in my life a really bad feeling about how it was restructured. And so I prayed about it. I wrote my thoughts down. I set up an appointment with my bishop, and I went in and I pretty much told him the reasons that I thought these people were totally unqualified, and the problems I had with them being in the positions. I liked them personally, but they were going to mess it up, and I could see it like plain as day writing on the wall. And I just said, I just have to get this off my chest, and here you go, do with it what you want. You're the bishop, but I need to tell you how I feel. And so I did. And within a year, there was pretty much an emotional train wreck within the program. I didn't say I told you so because I didn't need to at the time. And then I was called as the new young women's president. And I said, he's like, can you fix this pretty much? And I said, absolutely. I know how to fix this. You love the girls. That's the main thing. You love the girls. That's what's been missing in this program with the current leadership. And yeah, I got that. Let's go fix this. And but seeing how that had happened I was like, you know what? These are good men, and they have no clue what's up. They're doing the best they can with what they've got, and they're not inspired. They're just trying to make it work, and that's okay. But they're claiming inspiration from God, and I know they don't have it. They're trying to have it. Their intentions are good. It's nothing personal. But if God had truly cared about his youth programs, which we're told that they do preeminently care about the youth, then this stuff shouldn't have happened, because real damage was done to real girls that it shouldn't have happened, and they felt unloved, and it was a sad situation in a lot of ways, and I saw it in slow motion, and it was incredibly frustrating. And that was
including our daughter.
Yeah, including our daughter. But she wasn't even in there very much yet, but it was a mess. And then so I went in and fixed it and said, you know what? Yeah, I can fix this. You love the kids. And
tried to fix it.
Tried to fix it. Yeah, but at the same time, I'm having all these doubts, and I'm pretty sure the church isn't true, but I'm going to fix it anyway. And that was tricky. And then so juggling that, and then I made a new friend at the climbing gym, and we started hanging out and biking, and it was like I found my soul sister. And 5 minutes into our first bike ride, she says, "Hey, I'm a lesbian. I want to get this out on the table." And I said, "Fine, I'm a Mormon." She's like, "I used to be Mormon." And yeah.
And there we go.
And so I start listening, and we developed this beautiful friendship. And I realized for the second or third time in my life, that the church has caused real harm to real people that I love.
Yeah, I think we had to...
And it sucked. It was really hard.
Had your friend been hurt by the church?
Oh, immensely. Yeah, her family was, they were barely on talking to each other. There was, judgment and fear, and she'd come into her own truth of like, this is what I need to do, and she couldn't juggle the church and her lifestyle because they're just incompatible. And
yeah, and I think it was important getting both of us became pretty good friends with her, and Amy went on a climbing trip to Spain with her. I mean, they're super close, and she and her girlfriend are an important part of our lives, and getting to know them like on real terms, not on like not
at arm's distance,
not the Mormons,
superficial
not
terms.
the Mormons loving the person and hating the sin type terms, but really getting to know them as real people, and just completely debunking this notion that these people are choosing this lifestyle. It's a very damaging rhetoric that I think they get, and fortunately she got out of the church, or left the church, not officially, but just stopped going long before any more deleterious policies came out. But
But had she been a youth right now,
it wouldn't have been good.
It wouldn't be good, and she'd be. And, there's so many kids in that marginalized position, and I wasn't sympathetic to it until I really got to know someone and put away my judgment. And I'm glad I did. I'm so glad I did, because my life is better for it, and it's rad. And these are awesome people that I want in my life. And if I were to be giving stock to what the church is saying about them, they wouldn't be in my life, and that would be a loss. That would be real loss. Leaving the church is, it's hard, but it's not real loss. It's a net gain.
Yeah, I think probably an important part to bring up, kind of in the midst of all this, we discovered that beer's not bad, and we've got friends that are gay, and that life is good, and we're generally very happy. I think we had a good friend come over, and he confronted us, and he kind of brought up some questions like, I'm kind of concerned about that you're friends with this person, and
you're not wearing your garments. I can tell because I can see your shoulders.
Yeah, pretty.
I wear tank tops now. It's great
stuff, and he's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, well, and he's like, and the other day I saw her drinking beer in your house. Oh, like, and and I looked at him and I said, you know what? That's okay, because sometimes we drink beer with them
in our house,
and it's fine. And I mean, it rocked his world, and I neither of us like to cause pain. I mean, people like to get wrapped up in people find comfort in the church, and they want it to be true, or they may think they know it's true, and they wrap themselves in this tattered, stinky blanket, but they don't want to let go of it because it's cold out there. But anyway, it was. Oh, go ahead.
No, finish, and then I have a question.
Okay, yeah, because this was kind of a catalyst for a lot of things. And this was a private conversation that we had with him, and. But within one day, I was contacted by the stake president. They wanted us to come in, and so he had I think well-intended, and I don't fault him for it. In fact, he might be listening to this sometime, and
hope he does.
And I hope he does. But we're not upset. But he did betray our trust, and that hurts. That's damaging, and he felt like we betrayed his trust. And now this is some of the fallout that occurs when this goes on, as you know. And but that kind of started a bunch of conversations with the stake president, and then later the Area 70, and mostly kind of just keeping it to this discussion about the word of wisdom as kind of the talking point. But obviously there are much deeper issues. But I think through all that we learned that kind of what happens to people when they question. And that we learned that the handbook of instruction trumps scripture, it trumps everything else. And kind of the overarching doctrine that we learned is prevalent in the church now is that it's better to obey the man who presides over you than that's even more important than listening to your own conscience or the scriptures if you believe in them, or personal revelation, or whatever that is. It's more important to obey that guy above you, and that's the doctrine. Follow the prophet, and I think this leads to some very damaging type situations. So it was a catalyst for us saying, you know what, this is what the church really is. We're out. We want to get out because there's more to life than this.
When you said you guys were studying kind of the truth claims of the church and stuff, what were the resources that were useful to you as you were trying to figure out if the church was true or not?
We went about different ways.
Yeah, totally different. So
both of you answer you.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of time to listen. I'm an artist. I work in the garage most of the time.
Are those your paintings behind you?
Yeah.
Those are beautiful.
So yeah, I got lots of stuff.
Those of you listening, check out the YouTube. There's beautiful paintings in the background. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I can send you a link to my website if you want. Actual pictures.
We'll put it on the episode.
Sure. Yeah. So I do a lot of welding, and I do metal work. And so a lot of times I just have my earbuds in and I'm working in the garage. And so most of my processing time was listening to podcasts, listening to you, listening to lots of different podcasts, and just hearing people's stories was critical for me. And it was very validating to things that I'd felt and wondered about my whole life. And then being able to hear other people that had the same thoughts and struggles and different thoughts and struggles, different, just the stories of the damage that Mormonism does to families and to people, and realizing that the costs were huge. I made a pros and cons list, and at first it was lots of pros, and I was like, yeah, there's like a couple cons, but the pros were winning. And the more and more I studied, the longer and longer the list of cons got, and I was like, there's not even a debate here for this. And but yeah, so it was mostly just listening to podcasts, and that was my therapy. And then I read a lot of Rock Waterman. I think he's a fascinating man, and his viewpoint on the world and on Mormonism was a really therapeutic thing for me to really just, because he spends a lot of time just really looking at the scriptures, and if we say those are pinnacle in our belief system, let's actually look at them. And I kind of hated reading scriptures. I do it, but I didn't like them. They were just, I did it because I was supposed to, but I didn't love them for a lot of my life, and so I didn't study different than Jake's study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
one quick thing, Amy. For those who are kind of new to the struggle and are kind of looking for some stories to really connect with, were there any podcast episodes, not just Mormon stories, any ones that were particularly touching or moving to you, or useful or helpful to you, that come to mind?
Yeah, but my memory is terrible sometimes.
That's okay. That's okay.
And I can't pull out any. Oh, not that one guy. The guy that ended up suing the
Tom Phillips.
Tom Phillips. Tom Phillips' story was fascinating.
Yeah.
And the second anointing.
Yeah, that was crazy fascinating.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
And your story, and then just listening to all the stories about how you were excommunicated and how Rock was excommunicated, and that just made me want to punch stuff, just because excommunication is so barbaric.
Yeah.
It's, I'm glad I'm not being drawn and quartered, but it's on the same category for me.
Yeah.
And
okay,
my
great.
approach.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting. We came to the similar conclusions doing different things. My approach was more literature based. I just love to read. I mean, I actually do like reading the scriptures, or at least I did. And I would spend lots and lots of time just devouring books and devouring commentary on scriptures. I read all the church essays were pretty interesting, because as you go through and you realize that these church essays, or at least some of them, categorically disavow doctrines that used to be eternal truths, and you can't look at that and be honest and say that something's not off. What did you do?
So like the race and the priesthood essay, for example, I can see you guys fine.
Okay, well, we can't see you, but anyway.
Hang on, I think we just technical difficulties.
He can see. So
I know. Okay.
So the but
I'm being able to see him.
We'll work on it.
Okay, you Amy, you work on it while Jake talks. It's fine if you play with it.
I don't know how to work on that.
But I think I started out because I really wanted the church to be true, and I wanted certain doctrines and foundational things to be correct, and so I would just kind of start from where we're at, and I just worked my way back, and I kept deconstructing and looking at this and the other, and I think initially I read a lot of. A lot of that, Rock Waterman stuff was kind of a good transition for sure. And I still like reading some of this stuff. I, of course, read all the Denver Snuffer stuff, and I don't know where I stand with him. Multiple other books. What's the guy's name?
Adrian Larson.
Adrian Larson, Rob Smith. A lot of these, tons and tons of podcasts and blogs, and I wouldn't limit, and I'd look at the church resources too, and the history, and a lot of the just total contradictions of statements by previous church leaders that you can chalk it up to, well, it's because we have modern revelation, but they just don't jive. And so, I mean, mostly just tons and tons of literature and study, and I took it pretty serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. One of the major things for me was Doctrine and Covenants 121. My dad had us memorize this when we were teenagers.
What?
I know. Well, from verse 30 something on.
What?
Yeah,
memorized.
many are called, few are chosen, all the way to the end. I've got it in my head.
Was he a fundamentalist? Maybe secretly?
Yeah.
No, thank God, no. That'd be terrible. Well, for us. No, but yeah, he had us memorize this, and the scripture of as soon as begin to exercise unrighteous authority, and
121. I thought I was hearing
132.
I was hearing 132. I'm sorry.
Oh no, yeah.
No, 121's great. I love 121.
121,
We've
yeah.
pretty well thrown 132
Yeah,
out.
132 doesn't count for us at all.
It's all
I'm sorry. I misheard you.
man.
Okay,
No,
121. Yeah.
It's 121 of many are called and few are chosen, and that part about unrighteous dominion and all that stuff, and I actually quoted it to my bishop when I called him out on his unrighteous dominion later on with some of our meddling with the young women's program because he wouldn't let the girls lead. That was huge, like actually following our own scriptures and realizing how many times the church doesn't even care about our own scriptures, and I said we're just, you've dominated, and it's been unrighteous, and it's terrible what you've done, and
whatever righteous is.
So I feel like your priesthood's void, so I'm not going to do what you're asking me to do. And DNC 121, my dad will probably be upset that was one of the major things that led me out of the church, but I think there's some really good stuff in there. It's a great scripture.
It's great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's probably a different topic of what do we believe now. I mean, everyone wonders, well, what do you believe if you don't believe in the church? And
let's end there. But go ahead, finish your sentence.
I'll just finish. But yeah, we can talk later. But there's a lot of good stuff that comes out. There's a lot of good sayings and platitudes and things that can probably provide some benefit in life. But as to what is inspired and what is God's word, who is God, what is God, all that stuff, that's another topic. But then all this kind of, we posted some stuff every now and then on Facebook, and I think that might be for another time. But maybe actually counted them in the last year. We made 15 posts on Facebook that were not super in your face, but just would pose a question or a link to an article that would bring to light some things that the church was doing or whatever, and just generally more asking questions and maybe making some comparisons, and but fairly benign stuff. But that's what led to our being called in for disciplinary council, is just a handful of Facebook posts, and we can.
And you weren't saying the prophets of fraud or the Book of Mormon's not true. Was it?
There was a couple of posts and more comments within the posts where I would say something. The one thing that the stake president mentioned, one of the comments I made was, I don't have any reason to believe that President Monson or whoever is a prophet simply because I'm not aware of any prophecies he's made. But it was, I think, something fairly innocuous of like, I don't know and I don't think, and I'm an open book though. But he viewed that as speaking ill of the brethren, is how he interpreted that.
Okay. So when did things start getting formal? How did that happen? Talk us through when you kind of got called in and how that happened.
So we got called in to talk about beer. When was it? That was in 2014.
Right.
That was 2014, and then
But there's no discussion of discipline or anything of that.
No, but I didn't get my temple recommend, and we were released from callings. I was no longer Young Women's president pretty much after camp, after the end of the summer. Jake was released as scoutmaster. That was all a direct result of our discussions with the stake president and.
They said that it wasn't, but
it totally was. Yeah, they said that it didn't have an effect, but they were strongly correlated.
So then Amy started teaching gospel doctrine. I was the primary piano player, which is great because I could just read in between songs. I loved it.
And I used gospel doctrine as my kind of my guinea pig experiment time of like, do I have anything, what I believe now, do I have anything of value that these people want to hear, that my ward members want to hear? And it was running thin on what I had to offer without like totally editing myself all the time. And I was I was self-censoring a ton, and that was hard. It was hard to be genuine in that calling, and I was never going to teach anything I didn't believe. I mean, like always, I would never, there's no way I would testify of something that I didn't believe. So that was like causing major cognitive dissonance for me, of having to go and teach and really not wanting to be there. And that was in last fall through springtime.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just run through this timeline real quick. I don't know how much time you've got left, but so kind of November 2015, we went on a trip, just the two of us, to Hawaii, and we had a blast, obviously, but it gave us a lot of time just with each other, left the kids home, farmed them out to friends, and just talk about this stuff. I think November of 2015, I made my first post in Facebook that said something effective like, "I'm trying to be like Jesus, but the handbook won't let me," or something, and it kind of.
Well, that's when the big policy came out, right?
That's when the policy came out.
Yeah, that policy was huge for us too.
So, and then February, we were on this cruise with our family, which gave us a chance to kind of talk with our family a little bit. We have some siblings that are, well, we won't get into that, but it allowed us to talk to our family, and then by time we got home from that cruise, February 10th, 2016, we'd made the decision that we're not going back. I posted. And then a couple of other posts.
Yeah,
I think that I don't need to read all those, but
just the number.
But
you can just say what they were about, just topic wise.
Yeah, they were like, I wrote this thing. I did one called My 13 Articles of Faith, where I kind of went through the 13 Articles of Faith and kind of reframed them as to what I believe, kind of taking the church part out of it, and that kind of raised some hackles with people.
It did.
This one post about the tree of life and who is that guy in the white robe and what does that really mean? And, there's some interesting stuff there. A couple of posts on cognitive dissonance. Made one post that alluded to the fact that the church is kind of like North Korea. That didn't make any. Yeah, it didn't come out directly, but, there's some parallels. A couple of photos, that photo of the guy looking up from the umbrella as everyone around him is kind of still under the rain, the birds flying out of the cage. The one that brought us in May 27th, I posted one titled "The Anatomy of an Excommunication." Basically, it was a post from a blogger that was just kind of highlighting what's going on with otherwise very good church type people who are getting called in for their beliefs, and compared it to the kind of like the Catholic Inquisition. And after I posted that, we did get called in by the stake president. He said, you got to stop. If you do that anymore, if you make any more Facebook posts that are related to the church or don't put the church in a favorable light, I will bring you in for disciplinary counsel.
What'd you say?
And I said, well, I appreciate the fair warning, and I'll take that into consideration, but I need to be true to myself. But I'm not a big Facebooker all the time, and summer happened, and we're busy doing other stuff, and we're climbing and hiking and skiing and hunting or whatever. So I didn't think I posted anything again until September 2nd.
Real quick, how did that feel? Did both of you go, or just you, Jake?
It was supposed to be just me, but again, so we're kind of like
he
that.
does, yeah. We're so together on this and he knows that. But I think it's insulting when he just says, "Hey, I want to talk to Jake. Amy, you can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter." But Jake's opinions matter. So that just
my wife attended 3 or 4 of those meetings with my stake president. They didn't ask her a single question the whole time.
Yeah, it's kind of.
And she was exactly where I was. She was exactly where I was. They didn't care.
Yeah. They don't care.
Yeah,
women just don't matter. Yeah. It's too bad because it's too bad for them mostly. I mean, they're missing out.
Yeah.
Half the planet.
So how did it feel to both of you to be pulled in for Facebook posts and for even doubts or questions? How did that feel?
It feels, the church talks a lot about agency and freedom, and it sure didn't feel like that. It felt like, we weren't able to be genuine and still maintain connections with people who were trying to censor what we said with our family and friends. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and
but at the same time, I understand. I mean, I've been in that world, and I know what I've watched when I was kind of a true blue Mormon. I'd watch other friends go through this process, and I'd think, oh, why are they doing this? Why can't they just shut up? Why can't they just go away? And why are they trying to damage things? And so I understand that perspective, but also I understand this perspective now. And I don't think anybody has intentions or desires to harm, hurt people. But it's important that we try to help. And
Amy,
that's why.
Yeah.
How was it for you, Amy?
It felt really ironic that, I was living my life with integrity, my life with honesty. I've got nothing to hide. Like there's no incentive for me to try to brush anything under a rug. And from the very beginning of all these discussions with our stake president, and we said, well, of course we drink beer, and would you like to understand why we drink beer and why we feel justified and why we think this is actually a good thing for us? And he didn't want to know, but we told him anyway because we wanted him to understand and knew that he wouldn't unless we volunteered this information. And but it's because of our honesty and transparency and integrity, we're being disciplined by a church we have given our lives to, and it's just ironic.
Yeah.
What's it like to feel like they're monitoring your posts? Is that
Orwellian is what it is.
Yeah, and I think probably both of us have progressed to the point where we don't care as much. And I understand it, and I don't want to speak ill of our stake president because I do like him. I mean, as a friend and as a person, we've had some very real shared experiences on big rafting trips and camping and talking and then sitting in council and that type of thing. And I know it's eating him up to have to do this. And
he was more upset than we were.
But yeah, he's obviously more upset than we are. Right now we're like, you know what? We're becoming more comfortable with making people uncomfortable because I think that's how real progress is made in the world.
But yeah, he's a good man. We know his entire family. They know and love us, and this is the only bit of strife we've ever had with any of these people, and it's really not of our making. We're not the ones making these statements. We're just living our lives and trying to embrace truth, and being thrown under the bus for it and called, liars and deceivers. My family thinks I'm deceived, and that's hurtful. That's a hurtful message for people to share to someone who is feeling full of integrity and honesty. And to be told that you're deceived is just a terrible message.
Or to be called abusers or
wolves
liars.
in sheep's clothing. That's another good one.
So how did you get from losing your temple recommend to people saying those names to you? Tell us more about the story. So you had that meeting with your stake president, told him you drank beer and you weren't going to stop, told him that you weren't going to necessarily stop with social media. How did it progress to a disciplinary council?
Those were more private conversations with friends who would come up to us or say, "Hey, let's meet or let's go on a hike
let's talk.
Let's talk about this." And so
did word get around, do you think?
Words
lots
around.
Of discussion with lots of people talking to other people, and we'd make a point to show up at like ward gatherings, and some people would pull us aside and say, "Hey, I just want you to know you can do whatever you want. We really love you." And there's a handful of people that are willing to say that, and that's an awkward conversation to have.
But they'd also at the same time they'd also say, and just so you know, there's some other people who were
talking behind your back and
not feeling that
stabbing
way.
you in the back, and they think that you're traitors.
Yeah.
And in general, the people that were really, really upset wouldn't come to us and tell us to our face, and because I think that I don't know. That can't be a fun conversation, and maybe they're worried that we might, I don't know, be really nice to them anyway, and then they wouldn't have a leg to stand on. I don't know.
Maybe one important
weird.
story, and because a lot of these people would listen to us, and I think they do like us and love us. One particular experience, this is kind of painful to talk about, but I think it's meaningful. Is an exchange. We were down in Utah doing some traveling. We had this goal to climb the highest mountain in each state as a family, so we're working on that. So we're just about done actually. But so we were traveling, and we were with Amy's folks one night, and sat down on the back porch for some dinner, and they wanted to say a family prayer before dinner, and we think that's fine. And so Amy's mom started praying, and I think we prayed a little differently now. So we sat quietly, and I just chose to, I think probably all of us were sitting.
Well, we've had lots of discussions with our kids of why do you do what you do? And like, can you pray without your eyes closed? Can you pray without your arms folded? Can you pray upside down? Can you pray while you're driving? Can you, like, let's not attach the intent of prayer to certain physical triggers or behaviors, or like, it doesn't matter if you have your eyes closed. It doesn't matter if you're,
anyway,
it doesn't matter. So we'd have these kind of conversations.
So we chose to just sit there and just kind of think and meditate or whatever. And we had our eyes open, but she stopped shortly into the prayer and just looked up at us and said, "Could we please have some reverence here?" And oh boy, and it was just, and it kind of caught us off guard, because obviously we were feeling
reverent.
We were feeling reverent. We were feeling good, but apparently she could feel our eyes were open or whatever, and it felt like we were being.
How does she know your eyes are open? She has to look.
I don't know.
Well, that's what Jake said. He said, "You wouldn't have known if our eyes were open had you not opened yours."
And I did bring that up.
Well, she said, in her defense, she said it felt different, and because
sure
you can tell when someone's looking at you. You can feel that across the room, but
I mean, you can
feel
it.
Spirit, yes.
But the Spirit told her.
In fact, even though I drink beer from time to time, I can still feel promptings like that. Whatever.
I can still feel people looking at me sometimes.
But it kind of turned into an ugly confrontation, because we were attacked, and I said, we are being reverent, and this is how we're choosing to be reverent, and let's just get on with the prayer. And she obviously viewed that as a very confrontational and ugly thing, and then it led to this
defensive and aggressive.
Led to this discussion that night that really didn't go well. We ended up essentially being kicked out of their home.
Yeah, well, and then, so she knows we drink. She knows we've been drinking for the last almost 2 years now. And, that's not a new topic. But I had some beer in a cooler that was in her driveway, or in her garage, because I was trying to get it cold. It was summer there. And she saw it, and it was very upsetting to her that I had beer on her property. And so I said, well, okay, I'm really sorry. I really didn't mean to offend. And she said, well, were you going to drink it here? And I said, no, I wouldn't. No, I was going to drink it with my friends and my younger sister. I wasn't going to drink it here. But I was just trying to get it cold. And so where would you like me to put it if it can't be in the garage? And she said, well, please, on the street. So, it needed to be in the car on the street, not in the car in the driveway, but in the car on the street. And it was just silly, but magical powers given to beer in the driveway as opposed to on the street is a huge difference, I guess. I didn't know that. So I know that now.
But this is your mom, right?
This is my mom.
So it's really tough.
Be hard.
It's so hard.
This is a woman that we love and
we've never had any issue. I've never had any issues with my mom except for this, and it breaks my heart that it's sad, and it's unfortunate, and it's unnecessary, and I want it to go away. I want my relationship with my mother back. That's not weird.
And I know in their eyes they're just thinking, we'll just come back to the fold, and we can't do that and be honest. But I think it underscores, kind of back to your original question, there's a lot of people who I think try to be nice, and I think they believe they are nice, and they're probably sincere in being nice, but they're nice because they want us to know that we love them, so we have a happy place to go back to after we change our minds and come to see the light and go back into the church, which I think it's hard for them to accept, but they need to understand that that's just not going to happen. And it's hard when they do come to that realization. And so there's a lot of emotions involved, and relationships get damaged. And I think one of our purposes for kind of being public with this and agreeing to go to this disciplinary council is we want, if nothing else, we want to represent who we are to people and maybe help somebody understand us a little bit better.
We're going to say something, Amy?
Yeah, so I think it's hard we tend to give our love conditionally. We're supposed to give our love unconditionally, but it's easier to give our love conditionally. I love you because we believe the same thing. I love you because whatever condition you put on it. But then with us saying, we love you and the church just isn't true, and we still love you anyway, it's really confusing for a lot of members, especially family members that are having trouble in their minds. They want to do it, but they don't necessarily have the tools or have the practice, or some things take time. So I don't quite know how to help facilitate that and help get there. It's hard. It's hard, and the church does more harm than good in the messages they keep sending, that people leave because of sin, people leave because of they never had a testimony. These are all the reasons they leave. But when people leave because of integrity and because of love, that's really confusing for people, and it's very threatening for members to understand that when they really understand it, because it says they have to ask the question, well, then why am I here and what do I believe? And it's a mess. It's a full-on mess that we're in.
And if somebody said, well, they left because they wanted to drink beer, they left because they were offended because of how the bishop handled the young women's, if people made those claims, what would your direct answer be?
No, I left because the church claims aren't true, and I chose to drink beer as soon as I put two and two together and realized that all the claims of prophecy and leadership and all those other things were just more signs along the way of, oh yeah, this is another manifestation that this isn't God's church, that it isn't being led by inspiration.
I think I would probably add
it's not the cart before the horse, it's the other way around.
And I would add that, yeah, I agree, I used to think that way as well, but I've since learned that represents a very gross misunderstanding of why people are leaving the church, and invite them to learn more if they want.
So for you, Jake, it was what? Is it the same as Amy, or would you say it differently?
I think we'd probably say it fairly similarly.
Okay.
Let's no, that's not it. We need to. That's a pretty surface excuse that you're giving, and there's a lot more to it than that.
So for you, it was that the church wasn't true for you. That was it.
Yeah, that's why. That's the reason. If the church was true, we would stay in it and keep fixing the problems like we've been fixing for the past 15, 20 years. Right. And we're happy to do that, and we were happy to do that until we discovered that it just wasn't true. Yeah. And then it changed everything for us. And
it's one thing to say, well, the church is this great social network, a community of believers who are like-minded, who are out trying to do good in the world. That's one thing. But when the church makes claims that this is God's one true church, this is the only way, and eventually you need to accept this or you will be stunted in your eternal progression, or you're going to have these bad consequences, that's a very deleterious message. And we're not the only church that makes that claim. That's the other thing that I learned. There's dozens of churches that claim to be God's one true church, and so it's important to, I think, look at all those different issues. And when those claims are made, they can be very damaging when people believe those and then get mixed messages. And that's why people are killing themselves, or people are suffering in silence. The only thing that has kept me maybe somewhat vocal on Facebook with some of this stuff is I've had dozens and dozens of people reach out to me privately people that I haven't been in contact with for 20 years, mission companions, friends from high school, who are saying, hey, I can't tell you how much this means to me, Jake. I think that way too, but I can't say anything because I'm so wrapped up with my business or my family or my community that the stakes are too high. And we're fortunate that we're able to go through this together. Our kids are on board with us. We have a strong social network outside of the church up here. Our community and our jobs are not tied directly to our church membership. So, yeah, it hurts. It stinks. And we've severed some relationships that were otherwise very good. But I think we're willing to take one for the team because I feel like we're helping more than we're hurting.
So how did you go from difficult conversations with leadership and the gossip mill to a letter informing you about the disciplinary council?
We were on a hunting trip up. We were
caribou hunting, and Jake got a text.
Well, we were off
a text. When was this?
This was last week.
Okay.
We were up hunting
last Wednesday.
It was a long weekend, and then so we were off the grid. But once we got back onto the grid, of course, the phones start dinging. And one of the texts was stake president saying, hey, we need to talk. Can we do it tonight? Of course, it was after the fact. So we sent it back and say, hey, we'll be cutting up a caribou tonight. You're welcome to come talk with us if you want. He said, well, we'll do it another time. So the next day he sent us a text and said, well, let's meet. And he called us in. He actually asked us point blank, why don't you just resign?
Of course. That's how they always start.
He was hoping that we would.
I think there's a manual because they always start that way.
Would you please just go away?
And he said, why don't you? And I said, well, to be honest, there's a couple reasons. One, I like having access to the phone numbers and email lists. That's kind of handy. But really, I welcome the audience. I'm happy to stand before these people. And we've been in this particular stake for 10 years, in this ward for 10 years, and we've worked with these people for 10 years. And
they know us, we know them. We want to be in control of the message.
And I feel like right now there's a lot of people who are just mad at us and don't understand some of the reasons. And so this is a forum for us to give our reasons. And the outcome is a foregone conclusion. I think he told us that verbatim.
What did he say?
He said this court it's the disciplinary council. It's not a conventional court where there's a prosecution and a defense. It's run differently, and very much alluded to the fact that the result is all but already made. And we're going into that with that understanding.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so we recorded the conversation with him the other night, and just in case, 'cause you never know what is going to come out. But I think one of the seal the deal for me was, I said because it was I'm pretty proud of this. It was my Facebook post that elicited the text. It was Jake's comment within it, but
what was the post about? And what was
it was the post on
suicides on LGBTs in Utah.
It said, hey, the church can fix this issue. All they have to do is change the policy, unless and people will stop killing themselves. Wouldn't that be nice? How easy would that be?
Of course, it's not that simple, but yeah.
But it is that simple. They can just change it. They can. They have the power to change it, and I get it why they don't, because it was from God, and now they have to say it wasn't from God. So that's a mess, but that's their mess. And it's just this would be good. I think they should change it, and I said I'd like to help you understand the reason I post. It's not because I know that my audience really wants to hear it. It's not my sister's really upset about this. I know you're upset about this. There's lots of some of my previous young women are really upset about this. And it's really not for them or you that I'm posting. It's for the few people that are watching and listening that are marginalized. It's for the LGBT youth that are within our stake, within the view of my screen, of this post, that can say, oh, Sister Malouf thinks this policy is wrong. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's hope for me. And I said, that's why I post. It's not to make anyone mad. It's for the few that it might help. And I don't know who it's helping, but I have hope that if it's just one, that's worth it. And yeah, his response to that was, well, a lot of people feel the same way you feel, and a lot of people disagree with this, and they're quiet about it. And I said, so I call that apathy. And that's just not okay for me. And I won't do it. I refuse to do it. And I'm going to continue to post because that's just terrible advice. And he changed the subject after that.
That's exactly what they said to me. They said, you can think it, just don't talk about it. Just stay quiet.
Just be quiet.
Just be quiet.
Just be quiet. That's how we're going to heal the world and create peace, is a bunch of people being quiet with tyrants.
Yeah, the counsel is listen to me, obey my counsel, and you'll be okay. And even if it goes against your conscience,
you'll be blessed.
You'll be blessed. And those that's I was like, that's the best you got. That's your best advice for us, because that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And what was your comment that got you in trouble, Jake, on Amy's post?
Oh, all it was the comment that he cited verbatim was a statement that I made that we haven't been to church, or we no longer affiliate ourselves with the LDS Church as of February 2016, and it was just that statement, and that was it.
Wow.
And yeah, it's
pretty
like,
benign.
it doesn't take much. We didn't even have to write a book.
They're lowering the bar.
Yeah, I know. It's easy peasy.
So, did he say what the actual charge was?
Apostasy.
Okay. Yeah. And did he list? So you've already told us what he listed as evidence for that.
Well, I'm kind of curious what he does list. Well, I guess we'll find out in the court. The only evidence he has cited thus far are Facebook posts. And the Facebook posts that appear that we are not in support of the corporate church.
And specifically the one not supporting the church's November policy. That was
policy statements that I have no reason to believe that the church is led by prophets, because I haven't seen any real prophecy. And then the statement that we no longer affiliate with the LDS Church.
And was there a dialogue with him where he tried to tell you that all the Quorum of the 12 are prophets, seers, and revelators, that sort of thing? Yeah,
well, I think not this last visit, but lots of previous ones. He would close by sharing his testimony and belief.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have decided to go ahead and attend your disciplinary councils.
Yeah.
So we have a joint. We'll show up together.
Joint council.
So at least, Amy, you don't have to do the degrading 3-person bishopric thing while he gets the full 15, right?
Yeah, I pointed out to him that was rude to give Jake 12 people that listen to him, 15 people that listen to him, and give him 4 that listen to me. I just said that's just rude. I would like more people to listen to me. It's just rude.
So it's going to be his and her disciplinary council.
Yeah, we're
at
doing
the same time. It's a twofer.
What's also interesting is it's probably important with our children. Their ages 11 and 14. All this whole transition, all this stuff, we've been very open with our kids.
They're so sick of talking about the church.
Yeah, they're probably sick of it.
Mine too.
Yeah.
They're exhausted.
But, we have made it a very deliberate point to allow them to do what they want and to choose and kind of give them an objective viewpoint from both sides. And and they're very much happy to be out of the church as well. In fact, both of them independently came up to us after they learned about the pending council and said, hey, can I say some stuff? Can I write some things down that you can read? And we let them know that we don't want in anymore either. And so they
want their voices heard.
It's our whole family. It's a package deal.
Mm-hmm.
Will you guys be bringing witnesses at all?
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't think so.
Yeah, probably. We haven't thought about it.
Okay.
We mostly just have a statement we want to read, and that's it.
You'll both read a statement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. We maybe should bring in witnesses. What do you think?
Yeah. What did they witness? That we're rad people.
You know what? I had my father. What was that?
We could bring our cat. He loves us.
I saw your cat.
He was
Beautiful
cute.
Cat. Beautiful cat. I brought my dad and my mom, my brother, a fellow ward member, really sweet guy, and then Bill Bradshaw, who's my research partner on my LGBT research. All of them cried. All of them gave heartfelt testimonies, and none of it mattered. So it was really heartbreaking because they just kind of stared at the wall. There's this psychological thing where they can't really humanize you because it'd be too painful for them to sort of admit to themselves what they're doing is so barbaric and unkind. And so what they have to do is sort of depersonalize you, stare at the wall, look off in the corner, not make eye contact, and really tune out. And so for us, it was really hard that we were all pouring our hearts out, being really authentic, and they were just kind of like doing this, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of looking around. So I don't know what to say, but I had it in my mind that maybe it was sort of an Abinadi moment where maybe there was an Alma, you know, in the amongst the 15. And so far Alma hasn't emerged, but I just felt like maybe I would touch somebody, you know.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole point of us going to this. Otherwise, the decision's been made.
I do know that there are at least a couple of people on the High Council whose shelves are pretty full.
Oh, wow.
So
that'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's a bit of a tougher question, and I don't offer it to scare you in any way, but just we're being real here. I think I underestimated. I'm glad. I'm to this day glad we did it. I think it was the right thing to do for us. I don't think it's something that's necessarily right for everybody. But it was a really dark experience for me. Well, it was both. It was validating. It was dark because we were treated so impersonally and so inhumanely after giving decades of our life to this church and loving it with our full heart. So to be treated and dismissed so impersonally. They actually said to me, "You're on trial here, not us. You will not ask us any questions. If you ask us any questions, we won't answer them." Mm-hmm. They read from a script the whole time. It was just completely corporate and legalistic and robotic. It has to be how the scribes and the Sadducees or the Pharisees were, because it was just so corporate and impersonal. So on the one hand, that was really alarming and disturbing, and my wife was just so impacted by it, she resigned the very next day. But it was also validating in the sense that Christ was so obviously absent from the whole proceeding that it actually reaffirmed my decision and actually made me feel better about leaving the church, because I loved the church and it was hard for me to leave it. I felt torn and tied to it. But the real question I'm asking you here is, it was hard on the kids. Now admittedly we live in Cache Valley where it's very conservative, very devout. But even so, this is their friendships, this is their families, this is their community, and I can't say it was easy for them. And so how have you thought through, the fact that you may feel good about this, you may be doing it for a cause, but that there also may be some real sadness or pain or difficulty, not only for you, but for your children. How have you thought about that as you've made this decision?
Yeah, well, that's been, I guess, in the forefront of my mind with, at first it was, I'll try to stay in for the kids. I loved what I grew up in Mormonism. I loved lots of things. I loved all my friends. There were things I just loved. And then when I realized it was causing harm to my children in very real ways, when I realized my children were experiencing guilt for things that no child should feel guilt for. We have really great kids. My kids are more responsible than I am half the time. And realizing that the church had already caused them psychological damage and that it was only going to get worse. Their shelves were going to get as heavy as mine. If I can spare that psychological damage from my children, like the mother bear instinct in me kicked in like in overdrive when I realized that the loss that they would experience the longer they stayed in, the delusionment, the guilt, the false hopes placed in things that just don't hold water, those things are real, and I don't want them for my children. I want my children to have as much joy and as much peace and as much hope as they can have in their lives. And the church wasn't going to do anything in giving them those things better than living a life outside of the church could. They can make decisions. They can be responsible for their own choices. They can think about issues without having, well, what does the church say in the back of their mind all the time? And when there was a distinct point in a conversation I was having with my 14-year-old daughter when we were talking about grace, and I realized she was experiencing guilt during the sacrament and not that feeling of grace and hope. And that wasn't a thing I taught her. That was a thing she had learned at church. And it just made me so sad and angry at the teachings and the doctrines that are false, and the ways we teach things that just aren't right. And realizing that this is my daughter who I love, and she's been harmed, and I will do everything in my power to protect her. And so it was there's going to be some cost, there's going to be some fallout, but these are my kids, and I'm going to protect them. And it's ironic that I'm protecting them from the church, but right now that's the aggressor, and it's a subtle aggressor, and it's sugar-coated aggressor, but nonetheless, it causes damage. Our kids don't have a lot of friends in the church right now, just because the demographics of our ward. Our son had two close friends, and our daughter really didn't have any in our ward. And she had people that she liked. She had people that were her same age, but she didn't have people that she would call up and hang out and go skiing with and get excited about going to do stuff with. So there's really no loss there. There's one friend in a different ward that she's close with, but their friendship wasn't based on church anyway. So really no loss with our kids. I feel very fortunate that we haven't had that kind of baggage holding us back.
So Amy, for you, why a disciplinary council instead of just resigning and going away quietly? And then I'll ask Jake you the same thing.
Because I think it's barbaric, and I think it has no bearing on my spirituality and my life path. But what I think that is important is these people that are willing to hold this disciplinary council, they think it does hold water. They think that they're stripping me of my blessings because because of my choices. They are willing to inflict a consequence that they think is quite terrible. And I think that's barbaric, that they're willing to do that. They're actually not doing it, in my belief, but in their belief they are. And I think that should be talked about and like seen for what it is. These people are willing to it's just barbaric, and I think that should be exposed.
So you want to shine a light on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's terrible, and they're willing to do it and unabashedly. And the fact that they couldn't look at you while they were doing it, that's some serious cognitive dissonance for them. And I want that on their shoulders, and I want them to realize that this is the ball's in their court, and do with it what they want. But I'm not just going to take the easy road. It would be so easy for them if I just went away. And like I said, I want to make it easy for them, because I want them to own up to what they're living and what they're teaching.
Beautiful. All right, Jake, how about you?
Well, you kind of stole my thunder, because I was going to use this. I was going to
say it anyway.
Shine a light. I think these things need to be exposed and talked about at perhaps a more visible level. So, and like Amy said, we're fortunate that the fallout from this is perhaps less than it will be for some people. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that it can be extremely difficult for people. And we have close friends who are going through this similar thing, whose spouse is still in, or their children are still in, and my heart goes out to them, because there's a lot more baggage with that. We're very blessed to be in this together. We've got other community affiliations. We're on the National Ski Patrol, where we've got purpose and drive to give service in community with people that would these people on the Ski Patrol, I'll tell you what, they have our back more than anybody in the church ever did. And that might be hard for people listening to this who are in the church right now to hear, but there's some real, genuine people out there in the world that I'm really excited to become better acquainted with and join the global community to promote peace and prosperity and move on. And so I do want to shine a light on this concept of excommunication and this notion that doing so strips you of all your eternal well-being and salvation, because it doesn't. And I want to go into that with my head held high and let them know that we're okay. And we still love them. If we meet them on the street, we'll say hi. They're welcome into our home anytime. And I need them to know that. And that's why.
Beautiful. Okay, so what's the date?
October 11th, 7 p.m.
It's my brother's birthday. Sorry, brother.
Okay, so what's the date today?
The
September 27th. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're talking about 14 days, 2 weeks basically.
yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what are you guys Pacific time or are you?
We got our own time zone, Alaska.
Okay, so like an hour,
2 hours.
2 hours earlier than California.
No, then 1 hour from California, 2 hours.
Okay.
Utah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so those of us in Utah, it looks like 9 p.m. on October 11th. Is that right?
Yeah.
If people want to send good wishes or whatever.
Sure.
We appreciate it.
Is there anything we can do to show support or to help?
Ooh.
This is meaningful to us. It's actually, after listening to your stuff for a couple of years, it's nice to be able to get a voice on there and have our story recorded, because I think it's something that our family and friends and other people can have as a resource. So this helps. This is it.
Yeah.
I think after the council, whatever that result is, I think we know what it'll be. I wouldn't mind having the chance to read the statement that we've written.
Do you guys want to come back on and tell us what happened?
Yeah.
If you're willing.
That'd be fun.
Okay. Plan on it.
Yeah. So I talked to, I've debated on how public I want to be with this beforehand, and especially locally. We have 2 local newspapers. One's kind of a artistic underground one, and one's more just the mainstream newspaper. And both have expressed interest on covering this story. I don't plan on holding anything beforehand, but after the fact, once we've got once things kind of shake out, I think it's just good for people to know that this happens to people that have put everything into a church, and I'd like it exposed. It feels like I'm breaking up with a boyfriend that didn't even know we were dating. That's what it feels like. It's hard. Yeah. But better than keep on dating the boyfriend that didn't know we were dating. That'd be worse.
Yeah.
But,
So maybe let's just stay in touch and
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Beautiful. Well, you guys are a wonderfully thoughtful and courageous couple. It's really a delight to meet you. I hope we can. You guys ever in Utah? Do you ever come to Cache Valley?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll actually be in Utah on the 4th. We're going down to Moab to go biking. So I'll be in Moab next week.
She's going with her girlfriend.
I'm going with my girlfriend and her girlfriend. It's a girls' trip.
Well, reach out when you're in Cache Valley. I'd love to see you guys when you're there.
Yeah, we're in Logan at least once a year. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that'd be great to meet up.
All right, Amy and Jake Malouf, a lovely, thoughtful, courageous couple, set to be excommunicated October 11th at 9 p.m. Utah time. Well, we wish you guys luck. Our thoughts and good wishes are with you. Please let us know if we can help with anything. And we're thankful for your story. And we very much look forward to bringing you back on soon to tell us all the wonderful and gory details of the day, of your special day.
Awesome.
It'll be so special.
Thanks, John.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
John.
You guys take care. And listeners, thanks for joining us on Mormon Stories. If you want to ask Jake or Amy any questions, you can go up there and comment. They'll hopefully read and respond to respectful comments there. Anyone who supports Mormon Stories, just know you make this possible. If any of you are able to support us financially, just know that your money is tax deductible and it goes to making all this possible. We rely on your support. So, again, thanks again, guys. You guys are awesome, and let's talk soon. Good luck.
Great.
Sounds
Sounds
great.
good.
Thanks, John.
I think I'll finally make a donation.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. All
Yeah.
right, you guys take care.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is September 27th, 2016, and things have been going really well for Mormon Stories. We've had some great episodes lately and some great series. We've recently done the series on early return missionaries. We just had a fantastic couple episodes with the Hackings and with the Caters, which have been really, really popular. And we're about to kick off a series on Mormons in the United Kingdom, in England, and maybe even Scotland. But I had a story come to me just yesterday or the day before, and It's the type of story that I'm very committed to covering. Today we're going to be interviewing Amy and Jake Malouf. Is that how you guys pronounce it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They live in Alaska. What part of Alaska?
We live in Anchorage.
Anchorage, Alaska. Okay. And my understanding is that they've played a really important role, or at least an important role in the church there for quite some time. Very, very historically committed and active and well-respected members of the church. And I was informed recently that one or both of them have been summoned to a disciplinary council in their stake. And we're just a week or two away. What's the date of the disciplinary council?
It's October 11th.
And is it both of you or just one of you?
Well, there's a story there, but
Okay.
we talked them into both of us, so it'll be for both of us in front of the High Council.
Okay, great.
All they really want is Jake, but I'm coming anyway.
All right, that's good. I like that. All right, I'm excited to talk about that. And
Yeah.
and here on Mormon Stories, I've been through an excommunication. We've interviewed Rock Waterman and the Calderwoods and many others. I just think excommunication, I just don't like it. And I think every time it happens, there needs to be sunlight. People feel differently about it, but I just think it's important that everybody know what's going on. So I'm committed to doing as many of these interviews as needs be until, from my perspective, the practice stops, at least for things like beliefs and doubt and openly discussing doubts and things of that matter. So that's why we're doing this interview. So Amy and Jake, welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thanks, John.
All right. So let's begin by just talking briefly about each of your backgrounds in the church and kind of your early years. So Amy, why don't we start with you? What are you comfortable sharing your maiden name?
Yeah, it's Robinson.
Robinson.
Amy Robinson Malouf. And
Okay.
I was born in Salt Lake City the year Star Wars came out. It was rad.
77?
77, yeah.
Woo!
Nice. And born in Salt Lake City to a happy Mormon family. Both my parents are still active members of the church. My mother was a convert. She converted when she was in her early 20s. Was up at Utah State and came to Utah because she didn't want to be around the California drinking crowd. And that was, but the doctrines of Christ were huge for me, and the atonement and prayer, and that I was loved, and that I had a divine purpose. That was all intact and powerful. And the annoying things about church culture for me were like, well, we have ridiculously boring parties. Most of the people drive me crazy because we talk about the weather and just, cross stitching, and I want to go climb some mountains and do real stuff and jump off high things with bungee cords, and I wanted adventure and excitement, and it really wasn't offered to me at church. But that's not why I was there anyway, so it didn't matter. It was just more of a social annoyance.
Partly because you were a girl.
And partly because I was a girl. I remember when I was 14, I set up an appointment with my bishop because the boys were doing a high adventure, and all we got to do is car camping. And I said, this is not fair. I want to go and do some of these rad adventures. And so I set up an appointment. I went in and talked to him. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, I think I should go with the boys. I'm tough enough. I'm tougher than most of them. I'm faster than most of them. I think you should let me go. And what's the problem? And, I think it's really funny now, but I was serious about my plight, and that I was being treated unjustly. And he said, well, we just don't have the leadership for it. And we had two leaders that would have gone, but it was a boys' trip, and I was the only one that wanted to go. So that I put that on my shelf and said, when I'm a leader, I'm going to fix that. And we'll get to that stuff later, but that was huge for me, just the overt sexism and the unapologetic sexism that was just there. And women got stuck with the shaft. Men got to go move all the boxes when it was moving day, and women got to clean around the toilets. That's a raw deal. Boxes are so much more fun to move than clean toilets. I'll move boxes any day.
Sure.
So yes, the gender issues were huge for me, just massive. Probably one of the biggest things of, I'm going to make this work, but it sucks.
Yeah. But your testimony was super rooted in Christ, and that was your rock.
Yeah, that was my rock. So the social, all the other things that the church fell short in, of which there were many, they didn't matter to me. So I was going to just be a change to fix them.
Got it.
So yeah, that was my.
All right, Amy. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah.
All right, Jake, your turn.
Oh, my turn. Yeah. I wrote notes because I have a short memory. But yeah, similar to Amy. Very, I think had we met each other when we were younger, I think we would have been best friends. But I'm born in the church, raised in Utah, Cache Valley. Super strong family.
Cache Valley.
Love it.
Which high school?
I went to Skyview.
Yes, Bobcats.
Awesome. The true school. Yeah, in fact, we just went to our 20-year reunion last year. It was super fun to go back.
Awesome.
Yeah, super strong family connections, long connection to Mormonism. Some in my family were more recent converts.
A big motivation for her, just to find fun friends to be with that were clean living, and so Utah had a big draw for her. And my dad comes from pioneer stock. His family's in southern Utah and Las Vegas, and mostly Mormons and various levels of activity. But yeah, good people that were committed their lives to the faith. And yeah, where do you want to go from there?
How was your upbringing in the church? Were you active? Did you enjoy it? Did you have good experiences, bad experiences? How was your upbringing?
It was idyllic. It was really nice. I had a good group of friends. My family was a pivotal part of my life. I thought life was perfect and felt very blessed. There's always ups and downs with growing up and the roller coasters of learning how to use your body and turn into a teenager and all that stuff. But it was great. My whole neighborhood was Mormon. I mean, for the most part, and most of my friends were LDS, and it was a big part of my life. I had a few friends that weren't members, and one of the things that was hard for me as a kid was the way non-members were treated by my Mormon friends, and it was pretty pack-like and aggressive a lot of the times, and I remember being torn a lot with that and whether to stand by my friends or just be quiet and let the bullies bully. But so that was probably one of the big things to put on my shelf as a kid. How can Mormons be such brats when we all know better? But the church was true, and it was just that was a people problem, not a doctrine problem. And so that didn't matter for me. I was full committed, and was active in Young Women's, had good callings there, and did lots of stuff. Kind of by high school, I had better things to do with my time than go to Young Women's because the activities were boring, and I'd rather go mountain biking or climbing. And so it was just more fun. They didn't fill a need for me, but it wasn't because of lack of testimony. It was just these activities are boring, and I've got better stuff to do. But yeah, I read my scriptures, said my prayers, wrote my journal, didn't shop on Sunday, didn't drink coffee, loved the smell of coffee, but I didn't drink it, and I was willing to go to my grave not drinking coffee because it was just the wrong thing to do, or at least that was our commandment right now. And happy childhood. Life was good.
And did you feel what was your testimony rooted in? Had you had powerful spiritual experiences? Was it more socially constructed? It was
rooted in the doctrines of Jesus Christ. There was a lot of cultural things like green jello and church dances that just drove me crazy. I just as soon do other things.
Like my grandparents, but then also I have pioneers that walked across the plains. Primarily an entirely LDS family with a few exceptions. I had really good friends that I grew up with, raised by people and family and friends that taught me to work hard and play harder and think deeply, seek truth, that type of thing. I have no complaints about my childhood. As far as church stuff, I was into it. had my Eagle Scout when I was 13 years old.
Whoa.
And it's kind of a charger, you know. There's I don't know if you've heard of the Lotoja. It's this bike race that goes from Logan up to Jackson. Yeah, my buddy and I, we were 14 when we decided we were going to go do that, and we signed up for the race. And they said, well, there's no category for someone your age, and so we said, well, let's make one, and so they did, and so we did it every year from thereafter, and just lots of kind of I played saxophone and piano and went mountain climbing and skiing and hunting, and just kind of I really bought into this notion of it's important to improve yourself and be involved in kind of the Renaissance type idea, and kind of some of that led to how we lead our lives now, which we can get into later. I remember fantasizing. We'd do some of these things, and I'd fantasize about maybe winning some great race someday, and I'd be in the Olympics, and I'd dash across the line against all odds, and I would stand in front of the world, and I would testify that my success was due to my strict obedience to the word of wisdom, and I'd grow the church, stuff like that. And I think sorry if there's any super athletes out there, but I think there's a certain level of narcissism that has to exist to compete at that level. So I never did, but we like being active, that type of thing. I grew up. I worked on a farm, kind of that farm stock. The guy who ran the farm, it was a working historical farm. He was actually our Sunday school teacher. He's kind of a crusty guy, partly active, and But he taught us how to work, and we loved spending time out with the Shire workhorses and shoveling manure. And he would teach us things like the only thing you can do well with a pair of gloves on is wet your pants, and good sayings like that. And, but that was kind of how I grew up. My mom, she had arthritis, severe rheumatoid arthritis growing up, and I think that shaped a lot of the way I viewed the world. Gender roles in particular, just simply because she physically couldn't do some things that maybe women in the church or women in general would typically do. And so I would see my dad, doing the dishes and doing all these other things in addition to everything else he did. And I think it was a good example of like, hey, you can do stuff if it's satisfying and meaningful and purposeful. It doesn't really matter what your gender is. And I'm sorry my mom has to go through that challenge, but I think she and I would agree that it's got its benefits. It's taught us some things. Church, I'm super committed. I was kind of that type that would read the Book of Mormon before you're baptized and that type of thing. I had a strong desire to serve in the church, and I'd fantasize as I remember pushing the lawnmower once, and I'd fantasize someday I'm going to be the leader in the church and change the world. And I did have one experience, several really, but one experience that was pretty impactful in my life. I went to EFY when I was 14. That's what you do. And my friends were going, so I shelled out the bucks, and we went down to BYU for a week. And I was there, there's all the dances and workshops and things, and I was just kind of like, I don't know, what is the deal with all this? And I remember one night praying, just like sitting down on my knees in the dorm, and I kind of had a pretty amazing experience for me. And I think if using Mormon terms, I would say, it was like a baptism by fire or I don't know what it was, John, honestly, but from that I felt a deep, deep sense that there are higher powers above, and that I'm loved, and that life is good. And I don't know what that was, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, just simply because it was a pretty formative experience and foundational to kind of who I was. I wanted to do good stuff, and I kept going back. But one thing that always kind of puzzled me with that experience is I'd heard of people having similar things, and I thought, well, you're going to get this big witness, and it's going to say the church is true. And I never, ever got that. What I got was I'm loved, and life is good. But I never, there's no the Book of Mormon or Joseph Smith or the church or this, that, or the other. It was something something different. Callings. I went on a mission to Italy. Generally, challenging, but generally, I'd say a pretty positive experience. All sorts of stories there. Been, a teacher, an advisor, elders quorum president, ward mission leader, branch president, bishopric counselor for many years. Lots and lots of kind of higher profile, active, time-consuming type service things within the church. I don't know what else.
That's great. No, so that's really good background. You guys got married, and I'm sure that we could dig a lot into, two incredible lives. But for the sake of kind of hitting this topic hard, maybe from here, talk about what, after you got married, what things led to sort of whatever conflict you're now facing. I'm assuming you guys both served. What I've heard is that you guys are a pretty connected and well-respected couple in the Anchorage community. I don't